For decades, skiing ruled the Winter Olympics, until a group of rebellious snowboarders stormed the Games in 1998. What followed was a clash of cultures, scandals, and a battle for the soul of the Winter Olympics. In 1924, when the first Winter Games opened in Chamonix, France, skiing was the centerpiece. Cross-country, Nordic combined, ski jumping. These were the foundation of the event. By 1936, alpine skiing joined the mix, and downhill and slalom became fixtures. Through the mid-20th century, skiing defined the Olympics. In Austria, Olympic ski medals were celebrated like soccer championships. In Norway, ski jumping legends were treated as heroes. From the 1940s into the 1980s, skiing brought elegance, discipline, and tradition to the Games. But as television transformed sports into global entertainment, skiing started to show its age. By the late 1980s, audiences, especially younger ones, were turning away. Ratings for alpine events slipped. Meanwhile, far from the polished slopes of Innsbruck or St. Moritz, another movement was brewing. In 1965, Sherman Poppin in Muskegon, Michigan, strapped two skis together as a toy for his daughter. He called it the Snurfer. That backyard invention lit the spark for a new sport. Through the 1970s and 1980s, snowboarders, many of them skateboarders or surfers in the off-season, took over snowy hills across America, Europe, and Japan. They weren't interested in tradition. They rode sideways, wore baggy clothes, and blasted punk and hip-hop while carving lines down the mountain. Resorts banned them outright. By the mid-1980s, as many as 90% of U.S. ski areas prohibited snowboards, but banning only made the sport grow. By 1994, more than 2.5 million Americans owned a snowboard, and participation was climbing nearly 20% every year. Snowboarding was fast becoming the sport of a generation. It wasn't just kids in the suburbs. Competitive snowboarding exploded. In 1994, the International Snowboard Federation hosted World Championships. A year later, ESPN created the Winter X Games that brought jaw-dropping tricks and a new breed of stars. Sean Palmer, Terje Håkonsen, and others who pushed the sport further each season. For teenagers in the 1990s, snowboarding was rebellion, freedom, and style all rolled into one. In 1998, the Olympic door finally opened. Snowboarding would debut in Nagano, Japan, with two events, the giant slalom and the halfpipe. But the moment that was supposed to unify winter sports quickly exposed deep divisions. The first crack appeared even before the Games began. Terje Håkonsen, the Norwegian rider many considered the best snowboarder alive, refused to participate. He objected to the fact that snowboarding had been placed under the control of the International Ski Federation, an organization with no real connection to his sport. Håkonsen argued that snowboarders should govern themselves, not be ruled by skiers. His boycott left a gaping hole in the field and highlighted the resentment many riders felt toward the Olympic establishment. Those who did compete carried the culture clash with them into Nagano. And then came the scandal that ensured snowboarding's debut would be remembered forever. On February 8, 1998, Canadian Ross Rebagliati won the first Olympic gold medal in men's giant slalom snowboarding. Just 48 hours later, the IOC announced he had tested positive for THC, the active ingredient in marijuana. His medal was stripped. Newspapers from Tokyo to Toronto plastered his face across the front page. For critics, it confirmed every stereotype they held about snowboarders. But in a twist, Rebagliati's medal was reinstated within days. Marijuana, the appeals panel ruled, wasn't on the IOC's banned substance list at the time. The story turned Rebagliati into a cult figure, and snowboarding into one of the most talked-about events of the Games. The halfpipe brought its own fireworks. Germany's Nicola Thost took gold in the women's halfpipe, while Americans swept the men's podium with Ross Powers, Danny Cass, and Jarrett Thomas. For television audiences, it was unlike anything they'd seen in the Olympics. Riders soared out of the 22-foot walls, spinning and grabbing their boards, landing to roaring cheers. To a younger generation, this was the future. What followed in the years after Nagano was a scramble. Skiing had to adapt or risk being overshadowed. The changes began gradually. Moguls had already joined the Olympics in 1992, aerials in 1994. But by the mid-2000s, the influence of snowboarding was undeniable. Ski cross debuted at Vancouver in 2010. Ski halfpipe and ski slopestyle arrived in Sochi in 2014. These events, modeled directly on snowboarding, gave a new generation of skiers the chance to perform tricks once exclusive to riders. Snowboarding, for its part, exploded. Shaun White won his first Olympic halfpipe gold in 2006 in Torino, then repeated in 2010 in Vancouver, a run that still ranks among the greatest in Olympic history. On the women's side, stars like Kelly Clark, Tora Bright, and Chloe Kim carried the torch. By the 2000s, snowboarding was no longer a novelty. It was a staple. Yet, the rivalry never fully disappeared. Some snowboarders accused the Olympics of sanitizing their sport, stripping it of its rebellious roots. Others bristled at skiing's imitation of their events. And still, the line between the two grew thinner every year. By Pyeongchang in 2018, ski and snowboard events were sharing venues, fans cheering equally for both. The battle that began in Nagano had transformed the Games. Looking back, the 1998 debut was both disaster and triumph. Snowboarding brought scandal, but also a surge of energy the Winter Olympics desperately needed. Today, the Olympic stage looks nothing like it did in 1924. The sleek alpine racer flying down a course at 80 miles per hour still has a place. So does the snowboarder spinning 4 full rotations above a halfpipe. They stand side by side, rivals and partners, shaping the Games together. So did snowboarding save the Olympics? In one sense, yes. It brought in a generation of viewers who might otherwise have tuned out. Did it nearly tear the Games apart? In another sense, also yes. It challenged the very traditions on which the Olympics were built. In the end, the answer lies somewhere in between. What began as a clash of cultures in Nagano became the uneasy marriage that defines the Winter Olympics today. That's it for this week's Leisure Lore. And please do us a favor and subscribe to this channel if you enjoyed it. It means the world to us.